Hello, Year 2, how are you? And welcome to today's maths lesson. Now, in our maths lesson yesterday, we started to look at block diagrams, which are another type of graph to help us to show information. Now, today we are going to be interpreting these block diagrams. Can you remember what it means to interpret something? Yes, you're right. It means to answer questions about it. So we're going to be looking at the information shown on our block diagram and answering questions about that information. Now, before we do that, though, let's warm up our brains with our flashback. So here's your flashback for today. You have two questions. In the first question, how many cats and hamsters are there all together? So have a look at the key. How many animals does one blue square represent? And then work out how many cats and hamsters there are. Okay, then number 2, Tom has 7 bags of sweets. There are 5 sweets in each bag. How many sweets are there altogether? Well, if we know that there are 5 sweets in one bag, can we write a multiplication number sentence to find out how many sweets would be in 7 bags? Pause the video now and have a go at your flashback. Okay, Year 2, so let's have a look at the answers together. Well, number 1, how many cats and hamsters are there? So even though there's dogs on our pictogram, we're not going to be looking at that. Now let's have a look at the key to see what one blue square represents. Well, one blue square represents 5 animals, so we are going to be counting in 5s for our pictogram. Now let's have a look at cats first, because that's the first animal that we need to look at. We have 4 blue squares next to cats, and we know that each square represents 5 cats. So if the first square represents 5, the second represents 10, the third represents 15, and the fourth represents 20. So I've counted up in steps of 5 because each blue square represents 5 animals. Okay, now we need to look at hamsters because we need to know how many cats and hamsters there are altogether. So there are 3 blue squares next to hamsters. Will you count with me in steps of 5 3 times? Are you ready? 5, 10, 15. Stop. We've counted 3 steps of 5 and what did we get to? Yes, we got to 15. So there are 20 cats and 15 hamsters. Now, how do we work out how many there are all together? Well, we need to do addition, don't we? So here's my column addition. Let's start with the ones. So we need to do 0 plus 5, which is 5 because we're not adding anything to 5. And then the tens, 2 plus 1, which is 3. So therefore, there are 35 cats and hamsters all together. Okay, now number 2. Tom has 7 bags of sweets. There are 5 sweets in each bag. Okay, so we know that in one bag, there are 5 sweets. So we can write the multiplication number sentence, 7 multiplied by 5, because now we need to know how many there are in 7 bags, and each bag has 5 sweets in. Now, count with me in steps of 5 7 times. Can you tell me when to stop, please? Okay. 5, 10, 15, 20, 25, 30, 35. Yes, you're right. I need to stop because I've counted 7 steps of 5. And what number did I get to? Yes, I got to 35. So therefore, there are 35 sweets all together in 7 bags. Fantastic. Well done if you got those right. Let's move on to today's learning. So as I said, we are going to be looking at block diagrams and we're going to be interpreting them, so answering questions about them. Well, this block diagram here shows us the number of animals in a pet shop, okay? So along the x-axis, which is the bottom line, the horizontal line, we have the types of items. So we've got cats, we've got dogs, we've got fish, and we've got rabbits. So they're the different animals in the shop. Now, what do you notice about the y-axis, which is the vertical line going upwards? Yes, you're right. It's going up in steps of 2, isn't it? So therefore, each of our blocks represents 2 animals. Okay, so before we start interpreting this block diagram, we are going to work out how many of each animal there is. Okay, so let's have a look at cat. Well, if we go to the top of our block diagram and draw a line, okay, all the way to our y-axis, we can see that we end up at 10. So therefore, there are 10 cats in the shop. Okay, now what about dogs? Well, if we draw a line at the top of our block for dogs all the way to the y-axis, we can see that we end up at 12. So there are 12 dogs. Okay, now what about fish and rabbits? Could you pause the video now and see if you can work out how many fish and rabbits there are? Okay, yeah, 2. So again, if we draw a line from the top of fish to the y-axis, we can see that we end up at, yes, we end up at 4. So therefore, there are 4 fish. Now, what about rabbits? Well, again, let's draw a line across all the way to the y-axis. And, oh, there we go. We can see that there are 8 rabbits. So therefore, we have 10 cats. We have 12 dogs in the shop, 4 fish and 8 rabbits. Now our first question asks us, which animal is there the most of? Now the key word in this is most of, okay? So we are looking for the largest number, because when we look for the most of something, we look for the largest number, the greatest number. Now we've already worked out how many there are of each animal. So now we just need to look for the largest number. Is it 10, 12, 4 or 8? Oh yes, it's 12, isn't it? 12 is greater than 10, 4 and 8. Now, which animal is 12 looking at? Yes, it's the dogs, isn't it? So therefore, there are the most dogs in the shop out of all of the other animals. Okay, now it's your turn. I've got a question for you. Which pet or animal is there the least of? Okay, now the key word here is least of. So when we looked at most of, we looked for the largest number, the greatest number. What are we going to do to find the least of something? Pause the video now and have a think. Which animal, which pet is there the least of? Okay, yeah, 2. So when we find the least of something, we don't find the largest number like the most of, we find the smallest number. Now we have 10 cats, we have 4 fish, and we have 8 rabbits. I'm not going to include dogs because we know that there are the most dogs. So we've got 10 cats, 4 fish, and 8 rabbits. Which is the smallest number here? Yes, you're right, fantastic. It's 4, and there are 4 fish. So therefore, a fish is the type of animal which there is the least of in the shop. Fantastic, well done. Now we're going to be answering some more questions about this block diagram. Oh, okay. So again, we have our numbers because we've already worked out how many of each animal there are. And we have the question, how many fish and rabbits are there all together? Now, what are the key words in our question? Well, we've got fish. So we're looking at the fish. And we're looking at the rabbits. And we're looking at how many there are all together. Now, when we find out how many there are all together, like we did in our flashback, did we use subtraction or addition? Yes, we used addition because we're finding the total. Okay, so we are finding from this question the keywords, the fish and the rabbits, and we're finding the total. So we need to do addition. So let's have a look how many fish there are. Well, there are 4 fish, aren't there? We can see that because we've already worked that out. And how many rabbits are there? Well, that's the yellow bar, isn't it? And there are 8 rabbits. So we have 4 fish and 8 rabbits. So we need to do the addition. 4 plus, because we're finding all together, 8, because we have 4 fish and we're adding them to the number of rabbits to find out how many there are all together. Now, what is 4 plus 8 or 8 plus 4 if it's easier? Well, 8 plus 4 equals 9, 10, 11, 12. So therefore, there are 12 fish and rabbits all together. So now it is your turn. Here is your question. Now, what are the key words in this question? And can you work out how many cats and dogs there are all together? Okay, yeah, 2. So the key words in this question are cats and dogs. So those are the 2 animals that we're looking at in the pet shop, how many there are of them. And we are finding out how many there are all together again. Now, remind me, year 2, what do we do if we're finding out all together? The total? Yes, we're going to do addition, aren't we? So how many cats are there? Well, if we look under cats on our block diagram, we can see that there are 10 cats. And then we need to do addition because we're finding how many there are all together. And then the second animal, if we look at our highlighted keywords in our question, is dogs. Now, how many dogs are there? There are 12 dogs. Now, what is 10 plus 12 or 12 plus 10? That's probably easier. Well, if we add a 10, we're only going to be changing the tens digit. So we just need to increase the tens digit by 1. So therefore, 10 plus 12 equals 22. Well done if you got that right. Now, are you ready to look at the next question? Okay, so our next question is a different block diagram. And this one's a little bit different. How can you notice that it's different? Well, first of all, it is talking about food that people like. Okay, but what else is different? Have a look at the y-axis. Pause the video now and have a think. Okay, year 2. Well, did you notice that in our last block diagram, we had it going up in steps of 2. Now, what's this one going up in steps of? Yes, this one is going up in steps of 10. So this time, each block represents 10 people because we're looking at the number of people that like pie the most, like pizza the most, like fish the most, and like pasta the most. Okay, so first of all, before we get started on our question, let's have a look at how many there are of each. Okay, so how many people like pie firstly? Well, let's draw our line above pie and find what we come to on the y-axis, which is 10. So therefore, 10 people like pie the most. Now, if we do the same for pizza, we can draw our line across. And what do we get to on the y-axis? Yes, we get to 40. So therefore, 40 people prefer pizza. Could you pause the video now and see if you can work out how many people prefer fish and how many people prefer pasta? Okay, year 2. Well, let's have a look for fish. Well, we need to draw a line from the top of the block for fish all the way to the y-axis. So there's my line. And what number do we get to on the y-axis? Oh, yes, we get to 50, don't we? So therefore, 50 people have fish as their favourite food. Okay, let's try pasta. So again, we've got the purple blocks which represent the pasta, and let's draw a line at the top of those blocks. Now, what number do we get to on the y-axis? Yes, we get to 30. So therefore, 30 people prefer pasta. So we've got 10 people who like pie, 40 people who like pizza, 50 people who like fish, and 30 people that like pasta.